Welcome to Eternal Kingdom Mysteries, the place where we explore the most impactful stories of the Bible. Today, we will talk about a man whose courage knew no bounds. Eleazar, one of the most legendary warriors of Israel. His story is one of endurance, faith, and a heroic act that was forever recorded in the scriptures. Who was Eleazar, and why is his story so powerful? Find out in this episode. To understand the magnitude of Eleazar's feat, it's essential to know the historical context in which it took place. Israel, a nation whose identity was deeply rooted in faith, lived under the constant shadow of war. Their most formidable enemies were the Philistines, a people with advanced military culture, superior weaponry, and combat strategies that constantly threatened the safety of God's people. The danger was ever present, and every conflict posed an existential challenge to Israel. The Philistines were not just powerful warriors, they were cunning strategists, seeking to expand their dominion over the Promised Land. Throughout numerous battles, they managed to subdue the Israelites, seizing their territories and spreading fear among the people. This war wasn't fought only with swords and shields. It was also a battle of the mind and heart, a spiritual crisis for a nation standing on the edge of collapse. Philistine oppression became a test of faith, a challenge that put Israel's commitment to their God on trial. And in the midst of this crisis, extraordinary men arose, warriors who not only mastered the sword, but also possessed unshakable conviction. They understood the battle was not only physical, but spiritual. Victory would not come by strength alone, but through determination and faith in divine power. Among these brave men stood Eleazar, a warrior who distinguished himself with unmatched bravery and resolve on the battlefield, becoming a lasting symbol of resistance for his people. Eleazar was no ordinary soldier. His commitment to Israel and to God led him to face situations of extreme danger, moments where most would have turned back. It was in the desperation of war, in the uncertainty of defeat, that his resolve burned brightest. With his sword in hand, Eleazar became an unstoppable force, proving that faith and determination can overcome even the most powerful threats. His story stands as a testament to how courage and conviction can make all the difference in times of crisis. Eleazar wasn't just a soldier, he was one of David's 3 mighty warriors, an elite group of fighters whose battlefield skill was unmatched. These men didn't just fight for their king, they fought to defend the divine purpose of Israel. Scripture tells us that Eleazar fought with such relentless courage that his hand froze to the hilt of his sword, a striking image that symbolizes his unwavering determination and complete surrender in the heat of battle. The great battle, the moment that defined his destiny. The event that made Eleazar famous took place during a crucial battle against the Philistines. The army of Israel was weak and disheartened, and as the Philistines advanced, many soldiers fled in fear. But Eleazar did not retreat. Instead of running, he stood his ground in the middle of the battlefield and faced the enemy alone. With his sword gripped tightly, he fought tirelessly, striking down the enemies that surrounded him one by one. His stand was more than an act of bravery, it was an act of worship. Eleazar understood that the battle was not just for land or survival, but for the honor of God's name. When others fled, he chose to remain, not because he trusted in his own strength, but because he believed in a greater power that fought beside him. Each swing of his sword echoed his faith, and every enemy that fell was a declaration that God was still with Israel. In that field, soaked with sweat and blood, Eleazar became a living testimony of divine strength poured into human hands. And then, when the dust settled and silence fell over the battlefield, Eleazar stood, exhausted, wounded but victorious. The Bible tells us that the Lord brought about a great victory that day, and the people returned only to strip the slain. His courage inspired a generation, and his name was forever recorded among the mightiest of David's warriors. But more than that, Eleazar's story teaches us a deeper truth. When you stand firm in faith, even when you're alone, heaven fights with you. His life reminds us that true strength is not in the sword we carry, but in the God we trust. The battle was so fierce, so unrelenting, that by the end, Eleazar's hand had fused to his sword as if the weapon had become a part of his very being. This gripping image isn't just about physical endurance. It's a profound symbol of unwavering dedication. Eleazar was not merely fighting a physical enemy. He was embodying a divine mission, a heavenly calling. His clenched fist, unable to release the hilt, told a deeper story. He was so committed to God's purpose that even his body bore witness to his spiritual resolve. It was as if heaven itself had molded man and sword into one. After countless hours of relentless combat, something miraculous happened. God stepped in. The Philistine forces, though vast and powerful, were completely crushed. And when the Israelite soldiers finally returned to the battlefield, they found something astonishing. Eleazar, surrounded by fallen enemies, still gripping his sword with unshakable determination. He had stood alone, but he had not fought alone. It was a resounding victory, not just a triumph of strength, but of faith. A divine declaration that when one man chooses to trust God, the impossible becomes reality. Eleazar's story leaves us with powerful lessons even when everything seemed lost and the enemy overwhelmed them. Eleazar put his trust in the Lord and fought with holy boldness. Number 2, we must not flee from challenges. Life often presents us with battles that seem beyond our ability. But like Eleazar, we are called to stand our ground. God does not abandon those who refuse to retreat. Number 3, victory does not depend on numbers, but on determination. Eleazar was only one man against an entire army, yet with God beside him, he was unstoppable. This teaches us that when we fight for what is right, even the smallest warrior becomes mighty in the hands of God. But the story of Eleazar is far more than just a tale of physical courage. It is a timeless lesson in perseverance and unshakable faith. In our everyday lives, we too face battles, some visible, others hidden deep within the soul. We face personal struggles, spiritual crises, and moments when everything seems to fall apart. Yet, like Eleazar, who would not let go of his sword, we must hold tightly to our faith. Even when the world tells us to give up, we are called to believe that God is fighting right beside us. The key to victory does not lie in our own strength, but in the resolve to keep moving forward, even when the odds are against us. When we learn to fight with conviction, anchored in faith, we stop depending on external circumstances. Instead, we tap into a strength that comes from above. Every trial, every hardship becomes a platform for us to demonstrate that nothing can defeat a heart that trusts fully in God. If Eleazar's story has touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. What battles are you facing right now, and how can you apply his fearless faith to your own life? This is more than history. It's an invitation to live with boldness, with purpose, and with unwavering trust in the one who never loses a battle. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful biblical content that strengthens your spirit and fuels your faith. Follow us for more stories that reveal the mysteries of the eternal kingdom. See you in the next episode.